Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome back to In Case You Missed It, where I take a look at one or two news events that happened during the day, and I fill you in because maybe you missed it during your busy day. So in case you missed it, here I am. And just to give you an example of the kind of excitement that you can find here just about every day, yesterday I showed you the winner of the 2017 World's Ugliest Dog contest. And I'm sorry, if you weren't watching yesterday, then you missed it. The bad news is that you missed the World's Ugliest Dog. The good news is you still got me. And new feature that I'm going to start, I'm going to try this out and see how it works, the question of the day. So here is the question of the day. What do dinosaurs put in their cars? That's the question, and the answer is coming at the end of this video. Oh, and one more thing. So far I've been picking the subjects that I want to talk about, but if you want me to talk about a particular topic, or if you have a question, or you want to know more about something, feel free to put it in the comments, and I'll try to do it, okay? And let's be frank, if you come up with a topic, lazy person that I am, I don't have to come up with one. And now on to the stories, and the first one I want to talk about is this whole Russian matter. It's been done to death, beating a dead Russian bear, I guess you could call it. And there's a question talking about, in case you missed it, that everybody seems to miss in all these stories, which is these people that are accusing the Trump campaign and Donald Trump of collusion with the Russians. What is it exactly that they think that they did during the campaign? Do they think that Donald Trump somehow got access to John Podesta's email password and passed it along to the Russians so that they could hack into his emails? Or do they think that Trump fed them stories to write about Hillary Clinton because the Russians couldn't do that themselves? I mean, what is it that they think the Russians did that they needed Trump to help them to do, or vice versa? Donald Trump's got he won. I mean, so he had a pretty darn good campaign staff and consultants, plus he had plenty of people doing opposition research to find negative stories about Hillary Clinton. So I don't see why he would need the Russians, unless you're one of these really crazy tinfoil hat people that think the Russians hacked into the voting machines and changed the votes. But even then, if arguendo, as the lawyers say, that means for the sake of argument, the Russians did hack in to all the voting machines and change all the votes. How does anybody think that the Trump campaign helped them to do that? It's just crazy to me, and I'm glad to see that this whole brouhaha is dying down, because it's really been done to death. Anyway, that's one story. Now we're on to the second story, and this is kind of inside Jewish stuff. I'm Jewish, so bear with me, because I'm mentioning it because, well, if you're a Christian, maybe you find this interesting. If you're a Christian and you don't find it interesting, then just bear with me, because I think it has some application to us. So this is about the Haredim, or Haredi Jews. In Israel, these are the very, very, very Orthodox religious Jews. They're very, very religious. And to give you an idea just how strictly doctrinary religious these Haredi Jews are, they oppose the existence of Israel because they believe that Israel will be reestablished when the Messiah comes. That's the difference between Jews and Christians. Obviously, if you're a Christian, Jesus is the Messiah. But the Jews were still waiting for the Messiah. So they consider it a sin, a sacrilege, that Jews have taken it upon themselves to reestablish the state of Israel before the Messiah has come to do it. So that's their basis. But the point that has relevance to the United States is that there are a small minority of Jews in Israel. But the way the political system is in Israel today, the way the debate plays out, is that just like here, you have a very evenly divided polity between conservatives and liberals. And because you have this, and it's even worse because they have a parliamentary system, so you have this small minority and they have their own political party. And because of the even division, this small minority of very religious Jews, they have a great deal of power because no government can be formed that doesn't include them. And the very real practical effect and detrimental effect for Jews like me, for example, is that these very religious Jews, because of the leverage that they have, because of the way the Israeli political system works out these days, they have control over marriage and they have control over religious conversions. So, for instance, if you want to get married in Israel, there is no secular marriage in Israel. If you're a Muslim, it's a Muslim marriage. Or if you're Jewish, it's a Jewish marriage, and so on and so forth. That's not the problem. The problem is that it does have to be a religious marriage. So intermarriages, you can't do it in Israel. And if you do go overseas to do it, legally it won't be recognized in Israel. And the really bad part, and then there's another controversy right now, the Western Wall of the temple, where men and women pray separately because very religious Jews, just like Muslims, they segregate the sexes. For instance, when I was young, I would go to an Orthodox synagogue, and the men would sit in the middle, and then the women would be off to the sides. They did not sit together, and you have religious Jews on an El Al flight, that's the Israeli airline. They won't let a woman sit next to them. They'll insist that somebody has to move because they won't sit next to a woman who is not their wife or a daughter, relative. And getting back to the wall then is that the men and women pray separately, and the women and men of people that are not so religious, they want to pray together. And there's a big controversy there because they had a law there that was about to go into effect that would set aside a section of the wall where men and women could pray together. And the religious parties objected to it, and Netanyahu was faced with a problem. He either had to forego this law or his government would fall, because this very small minority, they could bring down the whole government. So that's the power they have. And what is worse, and what is starting to cause a division between Israel and the diaspora, Jews like me that live outside of Israel, is that very religious Jews want to control conversions. So if you're a Christian and you want to convert to Judaism, you have to do it in an Orthodox conversion, which has much stricter rules than a less Orthodox conversion. It's like the difference between the Army and the Marines, okay? It's easier to get into to the Army, and so it's much harder to convert in an Orthodox manner because you have to demonstrate your sincerity, and they make it harder. And the problem is that if you have a conversion, say in the United States, unless it's a rabbi does the conversion who is approved by these religious rabbis in Israel, the conversion won't be recognized and you won't be a Jew. And the way it applies to the United States, we have the same thing here where we're trying to pass a health care bill and you have two evenly divided parties, 52 GOP senators, you need 50 plus the vice president to enact a health care reform or just about anything. And except for judges, they took away the filibuster. But these few senators, they have a great deal of power. They have a great amount of leverage because they are just enough to tip the scale one way or the other. And it's a dirty job. I guess somebody has to do it. I'm going to defend Congress because people say, oh, why can't Congress get anything done? Oh, they're terrible. It's all their fault. And it's not really their fault. It's the fault of the American people that we're evenly divided. We don't give one party enough power to do what they want. It's really unfair, I think, to criticize Congress. And if you want to see a contrast, when Barack Obama was elected in his first term, he had 60 votes in the Senate. He had a majority in the House, and he had a filibuster-proof Senate, and he was able to do whatever he wanted as long as the Democrats stuck together. And that's something that the Republicans don't have. And remember that when the Democrats lost a single vote, when Teddy Kennedy died and he was replaced by Scott Brown, specifically to stop the health care law, they had to go through all kinds of contortions. They had to use reconciliation to pass that bill because they no longer had that 60-vote filibuster-proof majority, and one senator, Scott Brown, was enough to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. And that's one reason. I mean, the law doesn't work anyhow. The law is terrible, but one thing that made it even worse was that the House and the Senate could not later meet in conference to iron out the differences between the House bill and the Senate bill, because then it would have to go go to the Senate for another vote, and they no longer had their 60-vote filibuster-proof majority. And so they were basically stuck with the House bill. And that's something that has to be solved. And my advice, this is my 2 cents of advice, and it's absolutely free, to my fellow Americans: if you want something done in Congress, then you either have to go back and give the Democrats the House and the presidency and 60 votes in the Senate, or you have to do the same thing for the Republicans. And if you cannot give one party a governing majority, then you really have no right, we have no right to complain, because I'm guilty too. I'm voting for whoever I'm voting for based on my beliefs and my political orientation and my philosophy, and yours may be opposite to mine, and you're voting for whoever reflects your beliefs and your philosophy. And it just happens that the vision breaks down just about 50-50, and nobody has a governing majority. That's what we're stuck with. It's not Congress's fault. And that's it for today. And now the answer to the question of the day. The question was, here we go, I'll put it up here again. What do dinosaurs put in their cars? And the answer is fossil fuel. See you soon, and have a good day, and I'll be back again in case you missed it.
You got plan, darling?
I always got plan. They don't ever work, but I always got one.